The sky above the colony world was a pale silver, glowing with two moons that hung side by side. The air smelled faintly of whetstone and the sweet scent of strange flowers. Ryan walked slowly across the open plain, his boots sinking into the soft ground. He was not used to this planet yet. Every sound was unfamiliar, every shadow seemed alive. He told himself he was brave, but inside his chest his heart beat faster than he wished. He was part of a small human research group sent from the main colony town. Their task was simple: learn about the nearby alien tribe, record what they ate, how they lived, and if they were willing to trade. It was not dangerous on paper, but every man and woman on the team knew that the tribe they would meet was made of tall wolf-like beings with sharp fangs and strong claws. These were not soft creatures. They were hunters, strong and proud. Ryan was not a soldier. He was younger than most of the others, chosen because he was patient, good with languages, and able to listen more than he spoke. His short brown hair fell over his forehead as he adjusted the small recorder on his belt. His hands trembled a little, though he tried to hide it. Ahead of him, the group moved through tall grass that reached up to their waists. The leader of the mission, an older man named Bren, raised his hand for silence. They could see movement in the distance. Shadows stepped out of the forest, tall and wide, their fur catching the light of the moons. The aliens came closer, moving with slow grace. Their bodies were powerful, covered in thick fur, with ears that stood high and alert. They wore simple clothing made from hides and carried spears that looked more ceremonial than practical. Their eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, golden and watchful. At the front of the alien group walked a figure taller than the rest. It was a young female, her fur darker than the others, with long strands of silver mixed across her mane. She walked with confidence, her steps heavy but smooth, like a predator that knew its own strength. When she came closer, Ryan felt his breath catch. Her face looked wolf-like, yet it carried expressions as human as his own. She had sharp fangs that shone when she opened her mouth. Her golden eyes studied the humans with curiosity. She spoke in her own language first, a deep voice filled with pride. Bren answered her with practiced words, using phrases learned from previous scouts. Slowly, with pauses and gestures, they built a small bridge of understanding. Ryan stayed back at first, recording the sounds and noting the patterns of the words. His job was to catch the details others missed. But the young alien female soon noticed him. Her gaze moved past Bren and the others, settling on Ryan. She tilted her head as if trying to read him. Then she stepped forward until she stood only a few feet away. Ryan tried not to move. Her size was intimidating. She was taller by more than a head and stronger by far. Her fur glowed under the silver moons, and her eyes seemed to see through him. She pointed to his mouth, then made a strange sound that was half laugh, half bark. With a sharp grin, she revealed her long fangs. She reached out and with a playful gesture tapped her own teeth, then pointed again at him. The others did not understand, but Ryan caught the meaning. She was laughing at him. At his small, human teeth. Compared to her sharp fangs, his mouth looked weak. For a moment, heat filled his face. He wanted to hide. He felt like a child mocked by someone stronger. The other humans looked at him, unsure what to say. But then Ryan forced himself to breathe. He raised his chin, looked her in the eyes, and smiled, showing his small teeth without shame. He spoke slowly in the alien language, using the words he had learned. His accent was rough, but his meaning was clear. Teeth are not all that matters, he said. Humans do not need fangs. We survive with mind and with heart. We work together. That is our strength. The alien girl blinked. She had expected him to be embarrassed or silent. Instead, he stood with calm pride. For a moment, her golden eyes narrowed as if she were judging him. Then she let out another laugh, louder this time, not mocking but filled with curiosity. The other aliens around her murmured to one another. They were surprised at his words. The humans in Ryan's team looked at him with relief, some even with respect. The young alien female then spoke her name in her own tongue, slow enough for him to catch. Myra. Ryan nodded and repeated it carefully, Myra. She pointed at him with one clawed hand. He understood and answered, Ryan. The name exchange felt like the first step of something larger. After that moment, the humans and aliens sat together around a fire the tribe had built. The night grew warmer with the flames, and food was shared. The aliens roasted meat, and though Ryan was not used to its strong taste, he accepted it politely. Myra sat across from him, watching with a faint smile. Every time he chewed, she seemed to remember her earlier joke and let out small laughs, but there was no cruelty in them now. Ryan decided not to take offense. Instead, he asked her questions with simple words and gestures. To his surprise, she answered, sometimes mocking, sometimes serious. She spoke of her clan, of the great hunts, and of the songs they sang under the moons. The night passed slowly, filled with a mix of voices and the crackle of fire. At times, Ryan forgot his fear and simply listened. Myra had a voice that carried both strength and mystery. When she laughed, it was sharp but alive, echoing in the forest. As the fire burned low, Ryan looked up at the sky. The two moons hung above, watching over them. He thought of how strange this place was, yet how alive he felt in it. He was far from home, surrounded by beings stronger than him, mocked for his small teeth, yet something inside told him this was only the beginning. Myra caught him staring at the moons. She tilted her head and asked in broken human speech, you weak? Or strong? Ryan thought for a moment. Then he answered softly, not weak. Different. You will see. Her golden eyes studied him for a long time before she gave a slow nod. Then she smiled again, showing her fangs, and whispered something in her own language that he could not yet understand. But the way she said it made his chest tighten. That night, Ryan knew his path had changed. The girl who laughed at his teeth would not be just a passing encounter. She would test him, challenge him, and perhaps even change him. And though he did not know how, he felt sure that he would not turn away. The next morning the forest was filled with the sound of birds that had voices unlike anything on earth. Their calls rose and fell like music, echoing between the tall trees. The human camp stirred slowly. Ryan woke early, though his body still ached from sleeping on the uneven ground. He stretched, brushed the dirt from his clothes, and stepped outside the tent. The alien tribe had already begun their day. The tall wolf-like beings moved with purpose. Some carried spears, others carried baskets of roots and fruits, and some sharpened knives made of stone. Smoke from cooking fires drifted into the air. Everything felt alive, busy, and full of rhythm. Myra stood near the edge of the forest, speaking to two older warriors. Her voice carried strength even when she spoke quietly. When she noticed Ryan watching, her ears twitched, and she gave him a quick grin. Then she walked toward him with long strides, her golden eyes bright. You come, she said in broken human tongue. Then she pointed at the forest. Ryan blinked. Come where? Myra laughed and then used her own language. With gestures, she made it clear. She wanted him to join her in the hunt. Ryan's heart sank a little. A hunt? He was no hunter. He was a researcher with notebooks and recorders, not weapons. Yet the way she looked at him, the challenge in her gaze, made it impossible to refuse. He nodded. I will come. Myra's grin widened. She handed him a short spear, lighter than the ones the warriors used. Ryan held it awkwardly, but he gripped it tightly as if that alone would give him courage. They set out into the forest. The trees towered high, their branches thick with vines. Strange insects buzzed, and small lizard-like creatures darted across the ground. The air was heavy and damp, and the deeper they went, the darker it grew. Myra moved with ease, stepping lightly as though she had been born to the forest floor. Every sound, every movement, she noticed. Ryan, on the other hand, stumbled more than once, nearly tripping on roots. He tried to stay quiet, but every step seemed louder than the last. Myra glanced back at him, her expression amused. She pointed at his feet and shook her head. Then she whispered, "Soft step. Like shadow." Ryan tried again. He slowed down, watching how she placed her feet. Step by step, he grew a little quieter. Myra gave him a small nod, as if saying he was learning. After a long walk, they reached a small clearing. Myra stopped suddenly and raised her hand for silence. Ryan froze, his breath held. Through the thick brush, he saw movement. A large beast with 4 legs and rough gray skin moved between the trees. Its head was shaped like a hammer, with 2 small eyes and a wide mouth filled with blunt teeth. It sniffed the air, searching for food. Ryan swallowed hard. The creature was bigger than any animal he had ever seen. It looked strong enough to crush him with one blow. Myra's golden eyes glimmered with excitement. She crouched low, her spear ready. She gestured for Ryan to do the same. Ryan crouched, though his hands shook. His mind raced. How could he fight such a beast? His body was not built for it. His teeth were small, his claws non-existent. He felt Myra's eyes on him. She expected him to act. The beast stepped closer, its heavy legs crushing branches. Myra tensed, ready to strike. She glanced at Ryan, waiting for him. Ryan took a deep breath. He thought fast. He could not win in direct combat, but maybe he did not need to. His mind was his weapon. He looked around. The trees, the vines, the loose rocks. An idea came. Slowly, he shifted to the side and found a long vine hanging from a tree. Quietly, he cut it with his knife. He tied it around a thick branch, then looped it down toward the ground, shaping a crude snare. Myra frowned, confused at first, but she did not stop him. She watched silently as he worked. The beast moved closer to the clearing, sniffing at the air. Ryan placed a piece of fruit from his bag inside the loop of the vine. He stepped back, pulling the vine tight in his hands. The beast lowered its head, sniffed the fruit, and stepped forward. Its foot pressed down on the loop. Ryan pulled hard. The vine tightened, and the branch snapped upward with force. The beast was startled, stumbling back with a roar. It thrashed, confused by the sudden trap. Myra moved quickly, striking with her spear while the creature was distracted. She hit its side with precision, enough to drive it away into the forest. The clearing grew silent again. Ryan stood panting, the vine still in his hands. Myra stared at him, her chest rising and falling with her breath. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. "You clever," she said in her rough human tongue. She tapped her head. "Not teeth. Not claw. Mind." Ryan smiled weakly. His knees still shook, but relief warmed his chest. They rested near the clearing for a while. Myra sat on a fallen log, sharpening her spear. She looked at Ryan again, and her eyes softened in a way he had not seen before. "You fear," she said. Ryan nodded. "Yes. I was afraid. But still act," she said. "That is strength." The words surprised him. Coming from her, a warrior born, they meant more than he expected. As they walked back to the tribe, Myra kept glancing at him. There was still playfulness in her eyes, but also something else: respect. She no longer looked at him as a weak creature with tiny teeth. She looked at him as someone worth noticing. When they returned, the tribe gathered to hear what had happened. Myra told the story in her language, using gestures to show the trap. The other aliens listened, some nodding in approval, others laughing in disbelief. Ryan could not understand all the words, but he caught enough. Myra was not mocking him this time. She was praising him. That night the fire burned brighter. Food was shared again, and songs were sung in the alien tongue. Ryan sat among them, feeling less like an outsider. Myra sat close by, teasing him once about nearly tripping over roots but quickly adding that he had a sharp mind. Ryan realized something as the flames danced. This world was dangerous, filled with creatures and trials he could not face with strength alone. But perhaps that was the point. He did not need to be like Myra to stand beside her. He needed only to be himself and trust that cleverness had value too. As the night grew late, Myra leaned close enough for her golden eyes to catch the firelight. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "more test." Ryan felt his heart quicken. Another challenge awaited. And though he was afraid, he found himself smiling. Because now he wanted to prove himself not just to the tribe, but to her. The days after the hunt passed quickly. Ryan began to notice how the rhythms of the tribe flowed like a song. Every morning the warriors sharpened their spears, the gatherers left for the forest, and the young ones trained with wooden weapons. The air smelled of smoke and earth, and the constant sound of drums and chants filled the camp during the evenings. At first Ryan felt like an outsider, but with every day he spent among them, something inside him began to change. He was still smaller, still weaker in body, yet the tribe had started to watch him differently. It was not the mocking curiosity from the first night. There was a quiet respect now. Myra had become his guide. She was always near, teaching him without asking if he wanted to learn. She showed him how to track footprints through the dirt, how to read the wind by watching the sway of leaves, and how to listen for danger in the forest. When he failed, she laughed, not cruelly, but as if laughing at herself for expecting too much. When he succeeded, she grinned and slapped his shoulder with enough force to almost knock him over. One afternoon she led him to the river that cut through the forest. The water sparkled in the sun, clear and alive with darting fish. Myra crouched by the bank, dipping her hand in. She scooped a fish out in one swift motion and tossed it onto the grass. Ryan blinked in surprise. "Fast," she said with pride. Then she handed him a stick. "Your turn." Ryan sighed, rolled up his sleeves, and stepped into the shallow water. The fish were quick, sliding away whenever he moved. For nearly an hour he tried, and every time he missed, Myra howled with laughter. Finally, he stopped, water dripping from his clothes. "This is impossible," he muttered. Myra tilted her head and looked at him. Then she tapped her temple with a claw. "Mind, remember. You clever." Ryan stared at the water, then at the fish. He thought for a long moment. Instead of chasing them directly, he picked up some large stones from the shore and placed them in the water, shaping a small trap where the fish would gather. Then he stood still, letting the current push the fish toward the rocks. When enough of them crowded inside, he lowered the stick slowly and scooped one out. Myra's eyes widened. Then she let out a bark of laughter and clapped her hands together. "Yes. Clever." She crouched beside him and helped him catch more until they had a small pile of fish. That evening the fish were roasted over the fire. Myra told the others about his trick, and once again the tribe looked at him with interest. He realized they were beginning to see him as something other than weak. He was different, but different was no longer a word spoken with mockery. Days turned into nights, and the bond between Ryan and Myra grew stronger. They often argued playfully, their voices rising and falling like children competing. Myra teased him about his clumsy steps, and Ryan teased her about her pride. But behind the laughter there was warmth. One night the sky was clear, and the two moons lit the camp with silver light. The tribe sang around the fire, their voices deep and powerful. Ryan sat a little apart, watching. He felt both awe and distance. Myra noticed and came to sit beside him. "Why far?" she asked. Ryan shrugged. "Your people sing with such strength. I do not know the words. I feel like I do not belong." Myra was silent for a moment. Then she picked up a drum and pressed it into his hands. She showed him a simple rhythm, tapping softly. "Not words." "Heart," she said. Ryan copied her beat slowly. His hands were awkward at first, but Myra guided him. The sound grew steadier, blending with the song of the tribe. Soon the others welcomed his rhythm, adjusting their voices to match. For the first time, he felt like part of their music. When the song ended, Myra looked at him with golden eyes glowing in the moonlight. "You belong," she said firmly. The words struck him more deeply than he expected. He smiled, and for a moment they simply sat in silence, listening to the crackle of the fire. The next day brought another lesson. Myra took him deeper into the forest where the trees grew so thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. She showed him how to climb using vines, how to find fruit hidden high above. When he slipped and nearly fell, she caught his arm with a strong grip and pulled him back up with ease. Her laugh echoed through the trees, but she did not let go of his arm until she was sure he was steady. "Small teeth, small hands," she said, "but strong here." She touched his chest lightly. Ryan felt warmth spread through him, not from the sun, but from her words. That night, they sat by the river. The water shimmered under the moons, casting ripples of silver. Myra's voice was softer than usual when she spoke. "When first see you, I laugh. You weak. Tiny teeth, small body. I think you break easy. But now I see wrong." Ryan looked at her, unsure what to say. He had grown used to her teasing, but now her voice carried honesty. "You clever," she continued. "You brave. Fear stays, but you still move. That is strong." Ryan's chest tightened. "I was afraid of you too," he admitted. "Your fangs, your claws, your strength. But now when I look at you, I see more than that. I see someone who teaches, someone who laughs, someone who protects her people. Myra turned her face toward the water, but he caught the small smile that curved her lips. They sat for a long time in silence, listening to the river. It was a silence that felt comfortable, filled not with emptiness but with something unspoken. In the following days, their bond only deepened. Myra began to share stories of her childhood, of how she had fought to prove herself among the warriors. She told him of the old songs, the legends of her people, of ancestors who hunted the great beasts of the mountains. Ryan, in turn, told her of Earth, of blue skies and oceans that stretched farther than sight, of machines that could fly. Myra listened with wide eyes, her sharp features softened by wonder. She asked many questions, sometimes serious, sometimes playful. When he described the oceans, she laughed and said, "Too much water. Your people must be fish." Ryan laughed with her. Yet in her laughter he felt closeness, a bridge between their worlds. One evening, as the tribe prepared for another hunt, Myra placed a hand on his shoulder. "Stay close," she said. "Forest is wide, danger hides." He nodded, feeling a strange comfort in her words. That night, as the campfire flickered low, Ryan lay awake. His thoughts circled around Myra. He remembered her laugh when she mocked his teeth, her grin when he caught the fish, her steady gaze when she called him strong. Something was changing inside him. He did not know what it meant yet, but he knew it was more than simple respect. Myra too seemed changed. She still teased him, but the edge of mockery was gone. Her laughter carried warmth now. She watched him with eyes that held more than curiosity. The bond that had started with laughter and challenge had grown into something deeper, something neither of them had planned. And though neither spoke it aloud, both could feel it like a fire quietly burning, waiting for the moment it would blaze brighter. The sun rose red above the horizon, painting the forest in deep colors. Smoke drifted upward from the camp as the tribe prepared for a new day. But the air carried unease. The songs of the morning were quieter. Warriors sharpened their spears with tense faces. The drums beat not with joy, but with warning. Ryan noticed it the moment he stepped out of his tent. He looked around at the tribe, confused by the sudden change in mood. Myra stood at the edge of the camp, her arms crossed, her golden eyes fixed on the forest beyond. She was silent, and that silence worried him more than any words. He walked to her side. "What is wrong?" Myra's ears twitched. "Another clan comes. Rival. They want challenge." "Challenge?" Ryan repeated. She nodded. "They test our strength. They doubt we still strong. If we lose honor. We lose land." Ryan's stomach tightened. "And if you win?" Myra's mouth curved into a thin smile. "Then we keep place. We keep respect." The rival clan arrived by midday. They came from the northern forest, larger in number, their fur darker, their armor thicker. At their head stood a warrior with scars across his face, his eyes cold and sharp. He carried a spear that glowed faintly with strange stones embedded in its shaft. The tribe gathered in the open space between camps. The rival warrior stepped forward, his voice booming. Though Ryan could not understand all his words, the meaning was clear. He demanded a trial of strength. Myra stepped forward before any of her people could speak. She raised her chin, her golden eyes blazing. She accepted. The rival clan roared with approval. Myra's people looked proud, but also worried. Ryan could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone. That evening the fire burned high as preparations began. Myra sharpened her spear, her movements steady. Ryan sat nearby, his hands restless. He wanted to help, but he had no spear to sharpen, no warrior skill to offer. Myra, he said finally, you are strong, but their leader looks dangerous. How will you fight him? She glanced at him. With strength. With skill. With pride. Ryan hesitated. But what if strength is not enough? What if he is stronger? Myra frowned. Then I fight until I fall. That is our way. Ryan's chest ached at her words. He knew her pride would not allow retreat. But he also knew there had to be another way. His mind began to race. That night he could not sleep. He walked the edge of the camp, staring at the trees, the shadows, the stars above. His thoughts circled like restless birds. He could not fight in her place. But perhaps he could give her an advantage. He remembered the hunt, the trap he had made, the way Myra had called him clever. Maybe cleverness was the key again. By dawn he had an idea. The next day the trial began. The two clans gathered in a wide clearing. The ground was packed dirt, surrounded by a ring of warriors. The drums beat slowly, like the pounding of hearts. Myra stepped into the circle, tall and proud, her spear in hand. Across from her the rival warrior entered, scarred face hard as stone. He slammed his spear against the ground, sending a shower of dust into the air. The trial began with a roar from the crowd. The rival warrior charged, his spear flashing. Myra met him with her own, their weapons clashing with the sound of breaking wood. They moved with speed, circling, striking, blocking. Dust rose around them as the battle grew fierce. Ryan stood at the edge, his fists clenched. He could see the rival was stronger, his strikes heavier. Myra held her ground, but each block pushed her back a step. Sweat glistened on her fur, her breath quickened. Ryan's mind screamed. She needed more than strength. She needed something unexpected. He looked around the clearing. The ground was uneven, with loose stones scattered near the edge. The rival warrior stepped close to one. An idea flashed in Ryan's mind. He caught Myra's eye for just a moment and pointed subtly toward the ground. She saw it, her eyes narrowing in understanding. The next time the rival warrior charged, Myra shifted her stance. She dodged not backward, but sideways, leading him toward the loose stones. His heavy foot landed on one, slipping slightly. In that instant Myra struck, her spear cutting across his arm. The rival warrior roared in pain. The crowd erupted with shouts. Myra pressed forward now, her strikes faster, sharper. The rival staggered, surprised by her sudden advantage. Ryan's heart pounded. She was turning the fight. Not with greater strength, but with cleverness. But the rival was not defeated yet. With a furious snarl he lunged, grabbing her spear with one hand and wrenching it aside. Myra struggled, but his grip was iron. For a moment it seemed he would overpower her. Ryan's mind raced again. He remembered the vines, the traps, the lessons of patience. His eyes darted to a long branch lying just beyond the circle. Quickly, while the crowd focused on the fighters, he kicked it toward Myra. Her eyes flicked down, catching the movement. With a sudden burst, she let go of her spear, grabbed the branch, and swung it upward. The rival, unprepared for such a simple weapon, stumbled back. Myra followed with a swift strike of her clawed hand, knocking him to the ground. Silence filled the clearing for a heartbeat. Then the rival clan roared in protest, but the truth was clear. Their leader lay defeated in the dust, while Myra stood tall, her golden eyes burning with victory. The drums thundered. Myra's clan shouted her name. Even the rival clan, after their anger cooled, bowed their heads in respect. A trial had been fought, and strength had been proven, not just the strength of body, but the strength of spirit and mind. Myra lifted her spear high. She looked toward Ryan, her gaze locking on his. For a brief moment her proud mask slipped, and she gave him a smile that was not for the crowd but for him alone. That night the tribe celebrated. Fires blazed, drums shook the ground, and songs rose into the starry sky. Meat roasted on spits, and voices shouted with pride. Myra sat at the center, the hero of the night, surrounded by warriors who praised her victory. Yet she kept glancing at Ryan. When the songs quieted for a moment, she rose and walked to where he sat near the edge of the fire. She crouched beside him, her golden eyes glowing in the firelight. "You help," she said softly. Ryan shook his head. "You fought. You won. I only gave ideas." Myra tapped his chest with one claw. "Ideas strong. You strong." Ryan met her gaze. "We were strong together." For a long moment they stayed like that, the firelight dancing between them, the noise of the celebration fading into the background. Myra's smile was faint but real, her pride softened by something warmer. The trial was over, the rival clan defeated, the tribe secure. But for Ryan and Myra, the true victory was something deeper. They had fought not only with spear and claw, but with trust. And that trust had changed everything. The night after the trial was unlike any other. The air was still, filled with the soft hum of the forest and the silver glow of the two moons. Fires burned low in the camp, casting long shadows across the faces of the tribe. The celebrations had ended hours ago, and most of the warriors had retreated to their tents or the forest's edge to rest. Only Myra and Ryan remained awake, sitting beside a small fire that flickered gently between them. Ryan watched the flames dance. He thought about the events of the day, the rival clan, the challenge, the way Myra had fought and prevailed. His chest still ached with the memory of worry, of fear that she might be harmed. But now, seeing her safe and proud, he felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Myra's golden eyes reflected the flames as she stared at him quietly. "You clever," she said softly. Her voice carried a rare tenderness, different from the teasing or pride he had grown used to. Ryan looked down at his hands, then back at her. "Not clever alone," he said. "We were clever together. You trusted me." Myra tilted her head, her ears twitching. "I do not trust many," she admitted. "But you see differently. You see not just teeth, not just hands. You see heart." Ryan felt a sudden rush in his chest. He had never heard anyone speak to him this way before, especially not someone as strong and proud as Myra. His fear, his uncertainty, the embarrassment of tiny teeth, they all seemed to vanish under her gaze. He took a deep breath, deciding to speak. "Myra, I used to be afraid of your fangs. Afraid of your strength. But now, I see something else. I see courage, loyalty, and kindness. I see someone I want to be near." Myra's eyes softened further. She leaned slightly closer, the firelight highlighting the contours of her face. "And I used to laugh at your teeth," she whispered, her voice low and almost shy. "I thought you weak. But now, I see you are strong in ways I never expected." The words hung between them, unspoken yet heavy with meaning. Ryan felt his heartbeat quicken. he realized that the teasing, the challenges, and the days of training and hunting together had built something neither of them could deny. There was trust, yes, and respect. But now, there was also something more, an unspoken connection, a bond that went beyond words or battles. Slowly, Myra reached out. Her hand hovered near his, unsure, testing. Ryan did not move. Instead, he leaned slightly closer, closing the small distance between them. His hand met hers, fingers brushing against the soft fur of her wrist. The touch was gentle, tentative, but it carried warmth and understanding. Myra's eyes searched his, and he felt as if he could see her thoughts, her feelings, and her quiet admiration. She smiled faintly, a smile that was no longer mocking or playful. It was real, soft, and open. Ryan swallowed hard. "Myra," he said quietly. She placed a finger on his lips, stopping him. Her golden eyes glimmered in the firelight. "No words," she said. "Feel." Ryan nodded, understanding. Words had carried them this far, but now it was time for action. Slowly, he leaned closer. Myra did not pull back. Instead, she closed the gap between them, their faces inches apart. He could feel her breath, warm and steady. Her ears twitched slightly, and she let out a small, soft sound of encouragement. Then, carefully, Ryan closed the distance the rest of the way. Their lips met. It was gentle at first, a quiet, tender connection that spoke of trust, admiration, and the bond they had formed through trials and laughter. He felt her respond, pressing closer, her strength tempered by softness. For a long moment, they stayed like that, the firelight flickering around them, the forest silent except for the distant rustle of leaves. The moons above bathed them in silver light, their glow wrapping around the moment like a protective embrace. When they finally pulled back slightly, Myra rested her forehead against his. "Tiny teeth," she whispered with a soft laugh. "Not weak. Brave." Ryan smiled, feeling a happiness he had never known. "And your fangs," he said softly, "not frightening. Strong, and kind." Myra tilted her head and let out a playful growl, then laughed softly. The sound was warm and full, filling the quiet night. For the first time, Ryan saw not just a warrior, but a friend, a guide, and something deeper he could not yet name. The next morning, the tribe awoke to a new calm. The rival clan had returned to their own lands, leaving Myra's people in peace. Life in the forest resumed its rhythm, but Ryan and Myra shared a quiet understanding that had changed everything. They walked side by side, trained together, and ate together. Each moment carried a subtle closeness that the tribe noticed but never questioned. Over the following days, their bond deepened in small ways. Myra taught Ryan more of her people's ways, how to track the smallest movement in the grass, how to sense danger by listening to the wind, and how to move silently across broken ground. Ryan, in turn, shared human knowledge, simple machines, clever traps, and ideas to make daily life easier. They laughed more now, not just at mistakes or teasing, but at shared jokes and discoveries. The forest that had once seemed vast and intimidating now felt like a place they explored together. Ryan felt a sense of belonging he had never known on his home planet. Myra, too, seemed lighter, her proud demeanor softened by companionship and shared experiences. One evening, as the moons rose high, Myra brought Ryan to a quiet hill overlooking the forest. The view stretched endlessly, trees and rivers glowing under the silver light. "Look," she said softly. "Our world. Strong. Alive." Ryan followed her gaze. He felt awe and wonder, but also peace. It is beautiful, he said. But not just the land. The people. You showed me everything. Myra looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting the moons above. And you showed me too, she said. Not everything is strength. Cleverness, heart, you bring balance. Ryan reached for her hand. She allowed it, intertwining her fingers with his. For a moment, words were not needed. Their hearts spoke louder than any language. Then, under the twin moons, they shared another kiss. This time it was filled with more certainty, more emotion. It was not just a moment of connection, but a promise. A promise that they would face the forest, the challenges, and the world together. That they would honor the trust and respect they had built. That their bond was strong, like the trees around them, rooted and unshakable. When they finally pulled back, Myra rested her head on his shoulder. Tiny teeth, she said softly. Never thought they would be brave. Ryan laughed quietly. And I never thought fangs could be gentle and strong. They stayed like that, watching the moons, feeling the quiet of the forest. Around them, the tribe continued life, but for Ryan and Myra, the night had changed everything. They had started as strangers, then teacher and student, then friends. Now they were something more, partners, bound by trust, courage, and care. In the days that followed, the tribe flourished. Humans and aliens worked side by side, learning from one another. Ryan's cleverness and Myra's strength proved to be a powerful combination. Together they faced new challenges, hunted dangerous beasts, and explored unknown parts of the forest. Their bond remained the foundation of everything. And every night, under the silver glow of the twin moons, Ryan would remember the moment when fear turned into trust, mockery turned into respect, and curiosity turned into love. Myra, too, would remember. She had laughed at his tiny teeth once, never imagining the human could become someone she relied on, trusted, and cared for. Now, she would never let that bond be broken. The forest was vast, the world full of unknowns, but together they faced it with courage, cleverness, and heart. The moons watched over them, silent witnesses to a story that had begun with laughter, grown with challenges, and ended with connection. The adventure of Ryan and Myra was only beginning, but one truth remained clear: strength was not only in teeth or claws. It was in trust, courage, cleverness, and the bond that could grow between two very different beings. And under the silver moons, they knew that their worlds, though different, had found a way to come together.